Okay, we're going to be picking up with the Uprooted. Now, this book is by Handlin. His name is, in fact, Oscar Handlin. Now, you got to understand, in immigration history, again, we're studying immigration because slavery, it, the beginning of slavery, the foundation of slavery was forced immigration. Okay, and understanding forced immigration, free labor, denial of access to wealth. That's slavery. All right. So you have to study each part of that. So if you're going to study mass incarceration, you have to understand the issues associated with migration because it proves its point throughout history as far as who is being financed, who is being migrated in, and why they're being migrated in, and when they're stopped. So that's why we're going to put a particular focus on that. And this reading is going to go very well with slave and citizen. So keep Uprooted in mind as we're talking about slave and citizen. Now, the Uprooted is written by a Jewish man. He died, I believe, in 2011. So again, this is somebody who is pretty prevalent in the study of immigration. He's a Harvard man, very smart, graduated at 15, studied abroad, went through Europe. And in Europe, see, indentured servitude, slavery was not a new concept. Race-based slavery was new. Slavery was a new concept. And it, again, going back to Tannenbaum, it was more Justinian than anything else. So if you don't know what Justinian is, go look at the other video. And that was his mindset that he tried to apply to the United States when he came back as a young man. Now, this particular author, Handlin, had a lot in common with W.E.B. Du Bois. Please look at the W.E.B. Du Bois videos as to where he graduated at 15, very young, went to college, graduated. So he's like 17, 18, or 19. Then he goes to Europe, and he goes all around Europe, and he's learning that culture. Again, exactly like W.B. Du Bois. Comes back, graduates from Harvard, just like W.B. Du Bois. So his training and mindset is based on a worldview and not a North American view, which is why he did a lot of damage to the race relations in the country by his representation of slavery not being race-based. He communicated that slavery was, in fact, class-based, which it wasn't here. It was class-based in South America to a degree. It was class-based in Europe for sure. But here, to this day, it is race-based. Look at the incarceration numbers. Now, what about the book? The Uprooted is talking about, and he's a Jewish son of Jewish immigrants. And he's talking about all of these dynamics that are associated with the immigration process. Now, in my reading of it, it was the first time that an influent representation of the American aristocracy, the well-off white, male, educated group or representative recognized immigrants in a inclusive way. He wrote it's an epic. And the reason why it's an epic, what it means to say epic, it's not Darnell Bolton came in 1965, he had this problem, he did this, he did this, he did this. This is the proof as to why I feel this is what my premise is. It's saying Darnell had this experience, all these people had this experience, so I'm going to kind of generalize what this experience is based off of the experience I researched. This man is known for his research, but there's not a lot of citation and bibliography and all that kind of stuff that you'd be expecting in a scholastic writing. But this dude is like big time research, big time scholar. This is how he chose to write this book. It's also published by a regular company. It's not an academic publishing. So this is more for the common man. This book received the Pulitzer Prize. So it was well received. But here's the deal. It was an almost romanticized account, and almost a victimization account of the experience of the immigrant. That they had this almost utopic home, but so many problems that they needed to come to America. And when they came to America, they weren't welcomed. They were bewildered by the system and not treated right and kind of kept at a distance. And they fought to get through, and ultimately through their children or their children's children, the dream was realized. And I believe everyone who has ever moved, if you move from Chicago to Florida, you've had that I don't fit in, So I believe enough people could relate to it as to where it was kind of taken. But this was the Newton. This was the granite. This was the must-read book for migration and immigration of its time. And after a while, it slowly began to be challenged by particularly Vocoli. Vocoli wrote a dissent, the Contadini in Chicago, a critique of the Uprooted. And in that, he actually talked about how the Italians in Chicago had a very organized immigration process, and because how Handlin described it, they left not knowing where they were going. They were just reacting to whatever the process gave them, and they ended up where they ended up and did the best they could. God bless them. As to where Vocoli, who was from the University of Chicago, was saying, and there's this big history between the land-granted colleges and the big fancy, or the Midwest colleges and Harvard, the private powerful colleges. And he's saying, well, no, you haven't even, the people you talk to, that doesn't match with what happened in Chicago. These are real people. And he did a specific account of people and said, no, these people knew each other. They had good contact with people at home. They didn't migrate because of one particular reason. It was a multitude of reasons as to why they did it. And they had a great degree of agency, as to where Oscar Handlin said they didn't. They had to just make do with what they had. And Vocoli was saying, no, these people had systematic plans of developing wealth and returning back to their country. And even if they didn't return back to their country, their culture and everything was not lost or stripped from them, because in his example in Chicago, and if you have the chance to go to Chicago where I grew up, you'll see this, many of these immigrants transplanted their community to the point that they had their own stores, they had their own communities, they had their own politics, they had their own everything. And there are parts in Chicago today that if you don't speak that language, you're in trouble, because they do not speak English in those communities. The signs are not in English, in the stores and stuff like that. So most of the products in there are imported from wherever it is, be it Romania, be it Italy. I think they call it Little Italy in Chicago. And then we had Jewtown, and then we had Little China. You go in there, you better know the language. So if Handlin was considered Sir Isaac Newton, Vocoli was Albert Einstein, who broke the mold to the foundation of migration and the experience of the migrant. So these two readings, the Uprooted and the Descent by Vocoli, that came later in 1964. They are books of their time, but hold great value scholastically to know the historiography of immigration. And remember, slavery, mass incarceration, its foundation was the forced migration. And when you're watching the other migrations, they have something to do with the economy. And the American economy was built on slavery. It's still built on slavery. It's built on free, cheap labor, maximizing profits. So that is why this is significant. So again, we have the Uprooted, written in 1947, I believe. And this will be a great lead into the next book we will be reviewing. Stay with it.